Welcome to AZ TechCast, sponsored by the Arizona Technology Council, with your hosts, Steve Zylstra and Karen Nowicki. AZ TechCast is dedicated to covering innovation and technology in Arizona and beyond. Broadcasted monthly, AZ TechCast invites leading experts to have real conversations about what is happening in the tech sector across the state of Arizona. From regional news to innovative startups, companies, and emerging technologies, AZ TechCast covers the critical issues and economic trends propelling the state's growing tech ecosystem.
In this episode of AZ TechCast, we take a deep dive into the fascinating world of cybersecurity and its vital importance. We'll also explore how AI is shaping the landscape of cybersecurity. This episode is all about empowering business owners with the knowledge they need to navigate cybersecurity challenges, especially in this era of widespread AI accessibility. Our guests, Mark Dallmeier. I'm going to get it. JR Garcia and Helen Patton walk us through the importance of cybersecurity in keeping digital assets safe. We cover everything from why it matters to practical advice for business. Then we talk about how AI impacts cybersecurity today and what it means for our future. As AI becomes more common, we look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of cybersecurity, and we stress the need to stay alert against new threats. Our guests this week come from Mars Suite Incorporated, ANM, and Cisco, and we are excited to have this widespread conversation with our experts today. I'd love for us to start with an introduction from each of you. And I always like to start with Steve Zylstra, if you don't mind, my partner here for AZ TechCast. We mentioned before we went live, this is our 51st episode.
Can't believe it.
I can't believe it either, huh? Once a month for a handful of years and going strong. And I want to give a special shout out to, if I can, to Paisley, who has been with us while Leslie has been on maternity leave. And she mentioned in the green room that it is her last episode for a bit and looking forward to new opportunities. So thank you, Paisley.
And host last time.
And she hosted our 50th episode, which was perfect, right? She swooped in, helped Leslie out, and is swooping back out. So Paisley's in the background here, and we want to give you a heartfelt thank you for helping make this possible. So Steve is the president and CEO of the Arizona Technology Council, and I would love for you to kind of kick it off for us. Introduce yourself, the council, tell us what you're all up to, and then we'll do a round robin with everybody else, and then we'll get in the heart of the conversation.
Thank you, Karen, and welcome to our viewers. It's great to be back, and a little bit about the Tech Council. I'm Steve Zylstra, President and CEO of the Arizona Technology Council and its foundation called the SciTech Institute. The Tech Council is a statewide organization, has offices in Phoenix and Tucson. We have about 750 member companies across the state. We do public policy advocacy on behalf of our members. We do over 100 events a year. We have lots of publications. We're just about to launch what's called Vote Tech Smart. For those of you who are voting,
hopefully that's everybody.
Hopefully that's everyone. And also we negotiate lower cost products and services for our members. We run an association health plan with Blue Cross Blue Shield. We run a 401k program with Empower. So full service trade association business model. A couple of big events that are coming up. On the 27th, we have our E-Mobility and Clean Energy Conference. And on July 12th, we have our Aerospace, Aviation, Defense, and Manufacturing Conference.
And where's the best place for folks to go and find out about that? Certainly LinkedIn.
aztechcouncil.org.
Excellent.
Go to the events tab, and they're all listed chronologically.
And with 100 a year, there's something for everybody. And I've never heard anybody come back from any of those events and say it wasn't worth it. They always have found great folks to connect with in addition to a lot of information. So appreciate that. All right. Let's see who would like to introduce themselves next.
Sure.
All right, JR.
JR.
Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, thanks for having me. JR Garcia. I'm the Director of Solutions Engineering at a company called ANM. So we're based in Albuquerque, but we have offices in Scottsdale, Denver, India, Mexico, a few places, about 330 employees across the globe. So the team that I work with focuses on systems integration, systems design, but with a specific emphasis around cybersecurity. So thank you for having me.
Great introduction. Thank you.
Helen, would you like to go next? Oh, sure.
I'm going to leave. Mark's going to take my job.
Nicely handed off, Mark. So I'm Helen Patton. I am a cybersecurity advisor for the state, local, and education at Cisco. I've been doing that job for about 3 years. Prior to that, I was the CISO at the Ohio State University, and I come to you from Columbus, Ohio today. And started in Australia, which explains the accent, but I've actually been living in the US for about 30 years. So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Helen, I'm sorry, but I'm a Michigander.
I will forgive you. I will forgive you. If you ever do another podcast about insider threat, we can talk about football teams and students as prime examples of insider threat for higher ed.
Oh, man. Yeah.
Mark.
Hey, Mark Dallmeier. I'm the president and CEO of MarSuite Incorporated. MarSuite is a company that's owned by All Points Logistics. All Points Logistics is a $250 million solution provider to our federal government and armed forces agencies. So we were a concept that was formed within All Points Logistics, a product that was developed through a joint venture that was funded by the Department of Defense Mentor-Protege program. And we have recently spun out of All Points Logistics as of January. So we provide a next generation XDR, MDR, and cybersecurity monitoring risk management platform that, of course, can be used for the defense industry, but also for other commercial regulated industries.
Mark, I'll ask you not
Yes,
to
sir.
use acronyms because our audience doesn't always know what those
That's
acronyms mean.
absolutely. So
We could add an extra half hour, right? Just
Yeah,
to define
yeah.
all these acronyms.
We don't want acronym soup, right?
Right.
Yeah. So thanks for that, Steve. So the platform is basically a security alerting, detection, and response platform. So it detects and helps to protect an organization against cyber attacks, external as well as malicious attacks internally. So,
Mark, why don't we stick
sir.
with you? MarSuite is a cybersecurity company. Can you
Yes, sir.
define cybersecurity for our audience and why it's so important?
Wow. Great question. So if you think about cybersecurity and the evolution of cybersecurity, you'd have to go back at least 6 or 7 decades. So, but let's start with cybersecurity defined as it is today. Cybersecurity today is the proactive defense and protection of not just internal systems, software, hardware, infrastructure, facilities, physical facilities, but it's the proactive protection and defense for employees and any asset that an organization puts value in. So back in the day, right, a few decades ago, it wasn't called cybersecurity. It might have been called information assurance, right, back in the day. And so really what cybersecurity was and how it evolved was, let's take a big step back. So in some of the early days of cybersecurity, you had educational institutions like MIT, right, forming engineering groups and computer science groups. And they were challenging their students and their faculty to hack physical devices. Right, and in some of the earliest instances, they were hacking HO Train, right, to see how they could hack the train, hack the hardware, hack the engine of the train, and the electronics within the system to see if they can manipulate the system or enhance the performance of the train. So, those were some of the early days of hacking, right? And that was driven by MIT and a number of other universities. And then it evolved, right? This was way before the internet, right? So you had hackers experimenting and hacking into phone systems, phone devices, right? Switches, standalone devices, again, to see what they can do in terms of manipulating the system or the operating system or the hardware itself. And as the internet became pervasive, and as computers became pervasive, right, with desktop publishing and right, home towers, right, and business towers, et cetera, then you started seeing organizations become more concerned about securing the actual physical devices on the network and securing the network itself. And so over the years, you see this evolution of hacking and cyber attacks, and whether they're nation states, so enemies of the U.S., or they're cyber criminal groups, or they're independent hackers or hacktivists. There's a large body of enemies of the U.S. and people that are out there doing malicious things using technologies and using software and code. And they're launching attacks pretty much 24/7, 365 days a week.
Yeah.
And they're not just launching attacks on hardware or on internet available devices. They're launching attacks against humans. And so what I would say, the way I frame cybersecurity today is cybersecurity is the proactive defense and protection of any asset that an organization holds dear and puts value in.
Any JR or Helen, anything to add to that?
No, it was a great summary. Also keeps us employed, right? It's great.
Yeah.
I would add that I want to go back to a word that Mark talked about, which was information assurance and information security. I think the profession and the industry around cybersecurity has changed over the last 30 or 40 years. So if you go back 20 or 30, 40 years, it was about making sure that computers worked and they worked as expected and they were available. And so the focus was really around keeping systems working. And yes, people were hacking, but we also looked at things like internal errors and people who misconfigured systems and insider threats that were usually insider mistakes, not insider attacks. Mm-hmm. What we've seen over the last 10 years or so, probably 15 maybe, is the cybersecurity industry, the people and organizations who are selling goods and services as cybersecurity companies, the market's really grown. There's been a ton of money put into it. And most of that focus has been on technology, and most of that focus has been on technology that identifies external attacks to a company. So we went from information assurance, which was making sure that our information was protected and all those things, to cybersecurity, which is now very much focused on all the things Mark talked about, the defense against attack, and usually the defense against external attack, and usually the defense against nefarious external attacks, not errors so much. So we still talk about people who make mistakes, and we still talk about misconfigured systems that accidentally expose data to people who shouldn't get it, for example. But really, when we say cybersecurity now, it's synonymous with this protection, defense kind of mindset more than assurance now. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if that pendulum's going to swing back again, because now we've got a whole bunch of regulators who are recognizing that there isn't any company out there that isn't first a technology company that happens to do something else. If you're a grocery chain, you're a technology company that happens to sell vegetables. You know, you get the idea. So every single company has a need for a cybersecurity element to it. But we're also recognizing that it's more than just defense against attack. It's how do we make sure our operations are robust and resilient and assured and all of those things. So I think we might eventually come back around again. But right now, thank you, ransomware, it's very much about defense against attack.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, Helen, how do you think the market's going to respond to the explosion of deepfakes, dismiss, malinformation, and the fact that one of the terms that we kind of coined 8 years ago was brand jacking, mm-hmm. right? Which is an organization's brand or social media or web-based presence being duplicated or counterfeited. Sure. Yeah. And now that's extended to individuals, mm-hmm. right? High net worth executives, politicians, et cetera, yep. right? And so, like, how do you think the market's going to respond entering into this election year, where you're going to start to see a significant tsunami of deepfakes and this dismiss malinformation hit? Like, what do you think that's going to do to the market trajectory?
So I think it depends on how you define market. So welcome to cybersecurity. Every definition is important, and everyone's going to disagree on your definitions to start with. If by market you mean the vendor community who are selling cybersecurity things, I think we're already seeing it. The market is responding to AI-generated deepfakes by providing AI-generated defense capabilities. On the other hand, though, there's a big part of me that thinks that we're overhyping that at the moment, which is not to say it's not a threat that we need to pay attention to. But from a cybersecurity professional perspective, that this really isn't a new scenario. We've always had someone who's tried to misrepresent or spoof a different person for their own financial gain or political gain or whatever.
Right.
What's changed is perhaps the path of attack or the technology used in the attack, but we're still going to be providing the similar sorts of defenses that we provided pre-AI and, pre whatever is generating it now. So we're going to look at things like our confidentiality controls, so somebody can't take over an account without authorization. We're going to be looking at things like validation and know thy customer kinds of attacks, of defenses, so that we can do a better job of identifying someone who's spoofing a customer who's calling into a help desk, for example. We're going to be looking at multi-factor authentication still. We're going to be, all the things we've been doing for the last 20 years, we're going to apply again, but against a different adversary. So what's keeping people up at night right now is there something that really, truly is brand new? And if that is there something that we have in our toolbox that can combat that? And so far, I haven't seen things that are mind-numbingly brand new that we don't have tools to combat yet.
Yeah, I see a lot of that same stuff when I talk to clients. Is a lot of clients ask those questions around, well, how do we protect against deep fakes and AI and generative AI being able or being used to try and manipulate people and things like that. And to your point, a lot of the conversations we have with people and looking at the different attack vectors, it's really using a lot of the same tools we've always had, like education and MFA and all the same things. And so a lot of the conversations we're having,
that's an
I'm
acronym.
sorry, multi-factor authentication, which just means you need multiple ways of identifying who you are. So yeah, a lot of the conversations we're having with clients are very similar, just using the existing toolbox to solve some of these new problems.
JR, let's stick with you. So you're involved with creating cybersecurity plans for companies. What are the best practices that you see around cybersecurity as you're developing these plans for various companies? And is there any difference depending on the size of the company?
Kind of. So what I would say is the first thing is have a plan. That's probably the biggest thing. Most clients that I talk to don't have a plan, or they have one, it's just not written down. Or that plan is, hey, if stuff goes down, go call Bob, which is usually the smartest person in the room. So the first thing is have a plan, have different types of plans. So if there is some sort of a ransomware event, if there's an outage, all those different type of outage scenarios, just write down what you do in those scenarios. The second thing I'd say is take a risk-based approach to where you deploy your resources. So unfortunately, not everybody has unlimited money to spend on awesome tools like Mars or Cisco, right? And so understanding what the crown jewels are, what are the things that our attackers want to get to, what things cannot go down in terms of applications and infrastructure and those types of things, and then deploying your resources around those things. Because unfortunately, like I said, not everybody has unlimited funds to buy all the cool tools. So you have to be sort of strategic on where you deploy that capital.
I'm going to turn to you next, but I'm going to ask another question. First of all, business owners or business leaders usually hold the purse strings. What do they know? What do they need to know about cybersecurity in order to make those critical decisions?
Yeah, so we kind of have
That's for anyone, by the way.
Sure. Yeah, we kind of have a mantra that cybersecurity is foundational to everything. So whether we're talking about education of users, if we're talking about networking, data center, any kind of technology stack, we talk to folks about trying to incorporate security into everything that we do. And a lot of that has to do with just user education.
That's foundational.
Mhm.
Other comments on that question?
Yeah. I'd actually like to lean in on that, on that question and the question before. Well, one of the things that we've experienced over the last 15 years of architecting, building, deploying these types of services in small, early stage organizations, right, all the way up to Fortune companies, is in the lower part of the market. Candidly, these founder-run companies, they're not concerned with cybersecurity. Many of them aren't even concerned with technology. They're concerned with cash, with with their cash flow, with revenue, their customers. So they wake up every day thinking, are my employees going to show up to work? Right? How much capital do I have in the bank? Am I going to be able to make payroll? Right? And are we servicing our customers? And that's what most founders and leaders and executives wake up every day thinking about. Not technology, not cybersecurity. And so what we found over the years is our approach and our conversations really needed to change from a technology conversation to one of those three things, right? It was about, so how are you defending and protecting your employees and your brand, right? How are you defending and protecting your cash flow and your capital? How are you defending your opportunity to operate and generate revenue in a regulated industry? And so recognizing that if you don't have that fundamental plan and that foundation that you build, right, for clients, any severe cyber attack could destroy any or all of those things and take your livelihood from you. And so I just think that we as an industry have not done a good job communicating at the level of the business owner or the business executive. And oftentimes we have to become the translator between why is cybersecurity important? Why are regulations important? Why is being compliant to a regulation important, right, to the business owner? And Helen mentioned this earlier, but with the trillions and trillions of dollars that have been invested in the market, cybersecurity industry over the last decade and a half, you now have a massive glut of vendors in the market, which has led to technical debt. So you have companies that have overbought. Maybe they've bought the wrong technology. Maybe they've bought technology too late in the technology adoption cycle. So now they have outdated technology that they might have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars in. And now they're looking at the industry going, wait a minute, you guys told me that if I bought this, I'd be protected or I'd be secure. And that's not the case, right? Because we talked about hacking the human, we talked about ransomware, we talked about the individuals, the humans being targeted, not just the systems. And so I think that there's a lot to unpack there in these questions. And I think that, again, just my opinion, but we as an industry haven't done a good enough job of informing and translating the why somebody would be interested in this.
And the severity of the attack.
Right.
One of the great trends I've seen, though, over the last 25 years, I can remember when anything to do with IT was just a back office thing. Right?
Yeah.
And anymore, I see, particularly the large enterprises, that the CIO reports to the CEO. And if they have a CISO, reports to the C-suite as well. So that's been a good trend, suggesting how much more important it is to have all that protection that you've described, because it's the business is at stake.
It reminds me of the conversations we've had here at Business Radio X with financial advisors and even exit strategists. When a financial advisor says to a family or to a business owner, you've got to have a plan. But it seems so far off for them that someone's going to die, perhaps, or that they're going to want to retire. And then the what next for the business. So these kinds of conversations, I think really as part of our society in US, we're so immediate. We want things right here, right now. And we can't even think about, we're not trained to think about the what ifs. And so the conversation has to be, that needs to be part of it ongoing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one of our mantras, just kind of internally when we talk to clients, is just assume breach. Assume you're going to be compromised at some point. Assume that somebody's going to click on a link they're not supposed to click on,
Right.
or go to a website they're not supposed to go to. And a lot of times that informs the decisions that you make in terms of technology purchases, in terms of planning. If you just assume at one point or another, I am going to get hacked, I will get compromised, then you kind of change your thinking a little bit.
Mhm. Helen, do you have something to add as well before we go on to the next spot?
Yeah, I do think one of the challenges we've always faced as defenders on behalf of organizations is that recency bias. There's sort of two fallacies. One, it won't happen to me, and two, it won't happen today. And I think what we've seen because of the rise of regulations that are requiring companies to notify other people, law enforcement or the SEC or whatever, when they do have a compromise, what used to be hidden is now being revealed. And we're seeing, no, it doesn't matter the size of the organization. You could be a victim because you're targeted, but you could also be a victim just because it's an opportunity because you have an internet presence. And so, yes, assume breach, but also assume today. And the problem that we have, that what Mark was talking about with business owners who are worried about all of the things Mark talked about, is that assumes that they don't have to worry about this today because it's not going to happen today and it's not going to happen tomorrow, and they've got more important things to do. And so one of the things we have to do as defenders is to help our non-technical, non-security business partners understand that they have to be ready for it to happen as if it's going to happen today. And that means changing where you put your resources, for sure. JR's right. It changes the way you think about things. It changes the decisions you make. It changes how you prioritize. And not to go into it with a sense of, if I spend this money today, I never have to think about it again because it's like an insurance policy and I'm covered, but that it has to be incorporated into the way you operate every day. And that is hard for people to wrap their heads around because they've got more important things to do right now.
Well, and can I piggyback on that? Well, and Helen, I also think that what we're talking about and kind of that vision casting that we're communicating is at the end of the day, executives and leaders within organizations, we would like to see them to move forward and lean into creating a culture around security. Okay. And that's candidly, that's change management, right? Like a lot of what we do, from implementing a cybersecurity or regulatory compliance program, procedures, technologies, right? Education, training, that's all change management. And organizations struggle with change, right? Any type of change.
Humans
right?
struggle with change.
Right. And so we should lean in on and just acknowledge that, yes, you're spot on. We should be planning for the inevitable. It's not a matter of if, it's when, right? And we were having these conversations, decades ago around identity theft, right? Now that's very common because of the Equifax breach and other breaches, right? All of our data is out there. And so it's not a matter of if, it's when, and what are you going to do to proactively prepare yourself and defend and protect yourself around that. We view cybersecurity and AI as it's all about the human. We think security and AI is all about the human. And if you look at one of the most recent attacks and outages that you saw in the automobile dealership industry, right, with CDK going down for multiple days, and now it's coming out that it was ransom, right? And you had thousands of auto dealerships shut down, and you had thousands of people could not buy cars and had to go to other, right, auto dealers, and that were running a completely different back-end system. Like, that impacts people, right? When healthcare networks go down and you can't get your cancer treatment, that's a human problem, right? When you're a small business owner and your payroll account gets drained 3 days before payroll hits, you got a problem. That's a human problem, right? So it's not just an IT problem. It's not a systems problem. It's a human problem.
I agree with you for sure, Mark. The impact of a cyber problem is human. The impact is human. I think one of the things we tend to muddle up, though, is that when we say it's a human problem, what people hear is it's a human's fault that this is happening.
Yeah.
And I have to give credit to CISA and their Secure by Design program that they're rolling out now, that says we shouldn't expect humans to defend against the complexity of the cyber environment right now. We shouldn't blame a human for clicking on a link when we train them to click on links all over the place as part of their day job. We shouldn't we shouldn't be doing those things. So we should, as technologists, be doing a better job to design systems that are inherently secure before they fly off the virtual shelf and land in a consumer's lab or land in an employee's lab.
Absolutely.
And we shouldn't be blaming them, but you're absolutely right. We should acknowledge that the impact of us getting that wrong is a human impact. Yes, it's a business impact, but people are dying. Literally, this is not hyperbole. People are dying because we're getting our cyber environments wrong.
Yep.
So it's complicated, and we're muddying the language around that in the public sphere.
Yeah.
Karen, do
I
we
love
need to
that.
go to a commercial?
Yeah, let's go to the commercial break and celebrate Arizona Commerce Authority for being one of our sponsors, our main sponsor. And when we come back, Mark kind of planted the seed, and I'm sensing that's what Helen is speaking to as well. I want to really switch gears and start talking about AI and the impact it has on the cybersecurity landscape. But for right now, let's go ahead and listen to a word from Arizona Commerce Authority.
Our streamlined, pro-business approach helps you achieve more by putting less between you and future success. Less red tape, lower taxes, less distance separating you from the tech leaders of tomorrow. This innovative ecosystem will supply your business with tools and resources to compete in the 21st century and beyond. But your future is more than just business success. In Arizona, the lifestyle you want is at your fingertips. Explore cities known for their Southwest heritage and modern vision. Enjoy beautiful scenery and endless outdoor activities on land, water, or snow. And if you're looking for a little friendly competition, we've got plenty of teams to choose from. With constant sunshine, vibrant culture, and natural wonder, Arizona provides a style of living that's entirely unique. People from all over the world call our state home. From student leaders who fill the classrooms of our top-ranked universities, to a skilled and abundant workforce that's ready for what's next, to the neighbors, friends, and peers we interact with daily, Arizonans are united by a pioneering spirit that moves us forward. So as you look to the future, know that it's filled with the perfect balance of innovation and high-quality living that makes life better here.
Karen, you teed this up nicely. I want to say, first of all, AI is the hottest topic in tech today. By example, we have an AI committee. I think there's 70 companies that participate on the committee. I think we have 4 subcommittees, and both the overall committee and the subcommittees meet monthly. And it's the new shiny object for sure, but it also has a significant impact on cybersecurity. And I'd like to hear from our speakers today what that might look like. And why don't we start with Helen, then go around the room?
Yeah, so I think there's 2 sides to the AI cybersecurity story. One is, how does AI change the threat profile of an organization that's using an AI tool? Does it make it worse? Does it make it better? It's going to depend on the use case actually to answer that question. And then the other side of it is, as a cybersecurity professional, what does it mean to the way we work? There is certainly tooling that is available for detection and response, for example, that is infused with AI technologies that will allow you to identify threats faster and those kinds of things. Also recognizing that adversaries have access to the same tools. So the concern sort of at an industry level is, AI could do amazing things to help us be better protected. And also it could do amazing things to help our adversaries be better, faster, and do damage at scale in ways we haven't seen before. And it's a little bit too soon, I think, for us to know which way it's going to go, and or how quickly it's going to go in one direction or another. So when I talk to customers, particularly at state government, local government, education sort of levels, they're still trying to work out what are the use cases that they want to pursue to implement AI in their environment. And then at a security team level, they're trying to work out what needs to change in the way they work so that they're protecting their organizations to the degree that they need to. And it's a really complicated question right now.
Others?
Yeah, I
Jared?
mean, a couple specific examples that we've seen are attackers using generative AI to create targeted phishing attacks for specific individuals. If you think about a lot of the sharing that we do online and LinkedIn and all these things, there's a lot of personal information that's out there about us. And what we've seen is attackers using that publicly available information to create targeted email attacks to get you to click on things. So if somebody wanted to get me to click on a link, they'll put something to do with golf or cars, right? Or sports, right? The Chicago Bulls traded so-and-so, click on this link, find out more, that kind of thing. Because I talk a lot about sports and golf and cars. So if somebody were to try and target me, I'd be an easy target. So we're seeing that side. And then on the other side, on the defender side, to Helen's point, there's people like us, cybersecurity professionals, are sifting through tons and tons of information and alerts and all those types of things. And it's very difficult for a human to parse through all of that data. But using AI, it would help kind of figure out where the noise is and what's the important information to double click into. So,
You can add to that, Mark?
Sure. Yeah, Helen, I agree. I think there's so much to unpack around this question, and to Steve's point, the market right now around AI is just enormous. When you look at the capital markets, right, whether it's capital on Wall Street, right, investment banking, private equity, venture capital, and you look at the percentage of their spend and their investments, the majority of it is now moving into AI. And so what that's doing is it's creating yet another, I'm not going to call it a bubble, but it's creating this massive influx of capital and investment into one particular segment of the market, which is going to create a glut of technology and vendors in the market. And what happens when you have a glut? You have consolidation and you have massive commoditization of those types of technologies and services. So, when you go to Gartner and other market researchers and analysts, and you talk to them about this, what they talk about is, hey, there's this trough of adoption and then disillusionment in the marketplace. And I think what we're seeing is this massive hype cycle around the technology and around investments being made. And so you're going to see hundreds, if not thousands, of new companies hitting the market. That's confusing to business owners, right? It's like, okay, so there were 5 people last week that said that I did research on, and now there's 100, right? And a year from now, there's 1,000. So what technology should my people and should I be deploying? And is that company even going to be around in 2 years or 3 years? And so how do I actually think about this? How should I be making decisions around this? So there's a lot to unpack there. And when I speak on this topic, I typically lead with the reality is the genie's out of the bottle and you're not getting the genie back in the bottle. Meaning the technology is now in the wild, it's out there, and just about any cutting edge technology company is now infusing or embedding AI into their platforms and technologies. And if they're not, they're going to be left behind. So the whole market is kind of racing right to this AI, right, pasture. And so you're going to have a lot of similar technologies, similar platforms, et cetera. But kind of the security impact of that is you have employees that can now go buy these platforms. They can subscribe to these platforms, and they are. And that's the part of the genie being out of the bottle that you're not going to get back in. So this is like trying to prevent and stop your employees from surfing the internet when you first lit the internet up inside of your company. For those of us with gray hair that were around when we did that, right? What happened? Well, we killed productivity in the company because everybody was surfing the internet. They were right surfing. They were on search engines, right? They were looking for information. They were, sending emails back and forth to each other.
Buying stuff.
Yeah.
They were buying stuff, right? So some people were day trading, right? I like being in the .com area, and like seeing, 30 to 40% of the staff actually day trading at their desks, right? Before IT locked the systems down and put security controls in place, right? That was a reality of business. And so I think that's what you're going to see. What you're going to see is it's going to be paramount for organizations to try to put governance around AI inside of their organization. And the difficulty in terms of enforcing governance on employees is going to be quite a big challenge for organizations to try to get their arms around. Because if I'm an employee and you're going to stop me from using ChatGPT or one of these other platforms to do my job, to be effective at my job, because you're concerned about data privacy and me putting corporate data into the platform and making my corporate information publicly available through a platform, that's a risk that's going on daily, right? Employees are using these platforms and putting corporate information into the platform, and that's open to the public, right? And so it's now in a public database. So how do you stop them from going home and doing their work at home? Right? And so like there's just a lot to unpack.
So what do we consider? Go ahead.
I want to ask Helen a question, because this is really having a massive impact on education.
Sure.
And, educators are having to decide, how are we going to allow students to use these tools? I remember, I'm older than this guy, and I remember, when the calculator came out, right? And
Do you really?
well,
Yes, he does.
I was in college when the calculator came out. I was using a slide rule before that. But, then it was determined that, using a calculator was cheating, right? And then, of course, that changed over time. Now it's just a tool everyone uses, right? Same thing with the internet when it came out, right? And AI is going to be the same thing, because, as Mark said, now it's accessible to virtually anyone. And it's having profound impacts on public institutions like universities. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the first things that came out was the concern around plagiarism. So universities sort of look at these problems through different lenses. In the lens of teaching and learning, the first concern, because everyone thinks the negative first, right, before they tend to think about the positives. So the first concern was plagiarism. Well, they've been dealing with plagiarism for quite some time already, right? So again, it's just sort of a matter of what do they need to adjust in their pedagogy so that they're asking for materials in a way that students aren't going to want to plagiarize, or whether we can identify plagiarism. They're working through that right now. On the positive side of it, though, can instructors use AI to better prepare for their classrooms and their students, to better identify individualized learning? They're exploring those things as well. So it's not all doom and gloom necessarily, but it's change, and universities don't deal with change particularly well. So of course, every university that I'm aware of has at least one AI committee, just like your business group does, and they're working through the issues on a sort of use case by use case kind of basis. I think the calculator thing is sort of interesting. When the graphics calculator first came out, people are like, well, kids are never going to need to take math again. Well, how's that working out for us, right? So I think there's still going to need to be writing classes, philosophy classes, ethics classes, like all of the general ed kind of things are just not going to get eaten up by an AI agent. They're just not. So I think we're going to see this play out. what's interesting to me is more around workforce development in this. So the question is, if vendors are going to provide AI solutions, where they tend to provide AI solutions first is where something can be repeatable and easy, like let's call it low-hanging fruit. So they're going to go, let me give you an AI SOC analyst, and the AI SOC analyst is going to do all the things. Okay. But for entry-level people into the workforce, it's those standard, repeatable, easy to do things where they learn the most, where they go from being an entry-level worker to a junior worker to a mid-level worker to a senior worker. If we take the bottom two rungs of the ladder off the ladder, we are still going to have to teach them all the mechanics of how things should work without AI, without the calculator, so that they can become a mid-level, senior person. So we're going to have to think, as we think about talent development in our companies, we can't just go, oh, thank God AI is here. Not that it replaces people, but we go, thank God AI is here. That means someone doesn't have to do this low-level stuff anymore. They can do higher-level stuff. Well, guess what? They can't do higher-level stuff unless they know how the low-level stuff works. Right. So we're going to really have to think about, what does it mean to do training for our employees? And what does a career path look like now that AI is part of the ladder? That's a bigger challenge that universities, community colleges, boot camps, they're being asked to solve for right now, but they can't do that alone. And so this is the conversation I'm hearing in education at the moment.
I think that's so critical, right? And so what we saw in the 80s and 90s, when organizations were restructuring and they started flattening, right? And they were cutting training, and they were cutting development, leadership development programs out. I mean, the mid-market, right? Not Fortune 10 or a Fortune 50, right? But, and even then they kind of went through that process themselves. But you saw this flattening inside of organizations where middle management was cut, right? To drive profitability. And you have these generations of workers that either had to move down, to your point, because they weren't tooled, they weren't trained, there was no training and education and development for them, or you saw people rapidly move up, right? Kind of Peter Principle type of thing, elevated to their level of incompetence. And so like you had these challenges within these organizations, and then technology and platform came in and automated a large percentage of these capabilities. I think you're spot on, Helen. I think you're going to see more of that. And with some of the data and the research that's out there, there's upwards of, 42 to 53%, I think I saw the range of organizations that are, quote unquote, planning to retool up to 75% of their workforce.
I've got a funny story about something along those lines. So I had this kind of thought experiment of, could AI replace me? Could it replace JR as a manager of the company that I work for? Could an AI chatbot, as an example, replace 80% of my job? So I created a chatbot using OpenAI's API, just a password basically that allows me to use their technology. And obviously you have to train it. So I downloaded all of my chat history from WebEx Teams and said, okay, here's this big document. I'll just feed it to this AI chatbot and it'll sound like me and it'll be able to answer basic questions like it was me. And then I started going through all of that and I realized, well, I'm talking about a lot of things in my chats that we probably don't want the rest of the company to be able to query, right? So I'm talking about things like comp and, people's reviews and those types of things. And so, yeah, to the point earlier of everybody having access to these tools now, and they're actually quite easy to use. To me, it's a lot around securing that data and making sure that the information that gets fed these AI systems is actually valid for them to use or to see. Long story short, I did not end up deploying that chatbot.
We still need you.
Yeah, I'm still employed, but maybe future iterations of AI me will eventually replace me.
I'll tell you a quick anecdote. So recently I was hiring for an important position in our organization, and one of the applications really rose to the top. I said to myself, this is the best written cover letter I have ever read in my life. And it was compelling. And so I had staff run it through an AI detector, which there are many of, and both came back saying, "Yeah, this is AI." So,
Were you still impressed though? That's my question.
Well, during my interview, I spoke to them.
Of course you did.
I spoke to them about this, right? I said, I really need to know what your inherent writing looks like, right? So I need some samples of that. But just the method that people are using these tools, it's just incredible the impact that it's going to have. And then, the security issue, I mean, that's what we're talking about here today. I think it just exacerbates an already very difficult situation that the world is facing around cybersecurity. And it will make Helen, JR, and Mark's jobs that more important, right? They're not going to lose you. They're going to need a lot more people like you.
Hopefully.
So with that in mind, you've done a great job explaining AI and some of the challenges, or a lot of the challenges and concerns, as well as the possibilities, right? Replacing JR. No. What should companies be thinking about as it relates to cybersecurity and AI? Let's spend some time there. Like, what should they be aware of, looking for? You talked about how the market's going to be flooded with new businesses and new software, whatever, all that stuff. I'm a business owner. What am I looking for? What do I need to be aware of?
So I'm going to jump in.
Good.
I think as a business owner, you need to think about what do you look at for any of your vendors. So, if you're the kind of business owner that's really comfortable working with two people who have a home business out of their garage, go for it. If they happen to be doing AI, then that's fine. If you feel that that's a risk from a legal perspective or a continuity perspective or whatever, then you're looking for the same sorts of things, right? So all the normal things you would look for from any vendor, AI vendor, you should look for. When it comes to AI itself, though, I would start. I think Mark talked about you need to have governance in place. So what are the principles under which you want to be using AI? Because if you care about things like transparency, it's going to take you down a different path in dealing with different vendors than if you care about efficiency and power consumption, right? Because it's a trade-off, some of these things. Compute power and, water table preservation are sort of contraindicated with AI at the moment, at least, right? So think about the principles that you want to operate your business under and look for vendors in the AI space that are going to operate under similar principles. Now, technologically speaking, then you get into questions like, well, what's the use case you're going to go for? From a security perspective, like I said, we're seeing most AI show up in products that are around detection, response, and recovery right now. So we're seeing a lot of AI show up in ransomware defenses, for example. We're seeing AI show up for security operations. I'm starting to see AI show up in contract data mining, if you will. So how do you manage, like a lot of us have contracts that are in PDFs that you got to sit down and read from word to word to know what's even in them. You can now use AI agents to consume your contracts and give you summary information out of it or whatever. So what are the places where you think AI is going to help you? And follow those use cases and follow the vendors that are in those areas is going to get you what you need. If you just go out there and go, I am interested in AI, you're going to get flooded by vendors, and that's not going to help you or them, to be honest.
Yeah. I kind of look at it in two different ways. So I kind of look at it as a buy versus build conversation. So if you're going to build your own AI models and train them, kind of like my chatbot that I tried to build to train the replace myself. So there's that conversation. I think that conversation is more along the lines of data security, only giving access to the data that AI agent needs access to and nothing else, right? Try to avoid things like disclosing people's compensation plans. And then the buy conversation is more along the lines of evaluating vendors that are incorporating AI into their platforms. And, is that real or is that just marketecture, right? So evaluating it from that lens. So I kind of look at it in two different ways. And I think there are two different conversations and two ways to looking at the problem.
As I said earlier, I think there's a lot you could unpack around this conversation. You could probably do 5 or 10 shows on this, just this topic alone, just because of how vast it is and how transformational it is and how it's going to change the world and change organizations. And it's already occurring. And so I think that business owners are candidly going to be challenged around making these types of decisions. And again, as a vendor in the marketplace, I think it's up to us to help educate the market and educate owners and executives on how they should be thinking about this. But my suggestion to any executive or leader that's listening to this is go surround yourself with counsel, right? Go surround yourself not just with technologists or IT people or security people, but legal representation, financial representation, right? Create your own kind of mini board, advisory board around AI for your business and seek counsel, because not everybody has the right counsel for you, right? Their counsel is going to be, and their suggestions are going to be coming from the lens of their industry or their profession, right? And so they might be limited in terms of their perspective and understanding of use cases, of risk, right? Of the requirements, right? Associated with moving forward with an AI strategy. You talked about data, right? Well, how many organizations are actually ready and have their data classified and documented and cleansed the way it should be? Very small percentage of organizations, right? And within AI and AI-based models and AI-powered technologies, clean data is the key. Because if you put bad data or unclean data or redundant data into an AI model, it will create a hallucination.
Garbage in, garbage out.
Right. It will basically create a bias. It will make a decision and provide a recommendation around the task that you're putting in front of it, because it has limited data or bad data to make the decision. And so this is where I think people really need to focus on use case. As Helen said, I think people need to focus on security and take a big step back and say, hey, am I even ready for this? What's my readiness around moving forward with an AI strategy? So let's call it an AI strategy, right? That supports a business strategy or a business outcome that you're attempting to drive. Look, if you want to reduce, right, your internal operating costs in your manufacturing company, and you've got heavy back office, right, and that's where the majority of your overhead or your cost is, and you want to try to automate, that's a great use case. But how do you even begin? How do you start? Because in most instances, there's so much tribal knowledge. A lot of these organizations don't have policies, procedures, processes written down. It's all one-off, right? The people that have been there 15, 20, 25, 30 years, they know how to operate the business day to day, but none of that intelligence is captured anywhere. So would you say that organization is ready for AI?
Yeah, but 97% of all Arizona's businesses are small businesses with less than 100 employees. And what you just described is indicative of a lot of small enterprises without the policies and procedures or capturing the tribal knowledge that you refer to. Do I have time for one more question?
You do. Yeah, go.
Okay. Just quickly, if we can go around the room, Helen, we'll start with you. If you had a crystal ball and you were looking out 5, maybe even 10 years from now, what? Well, 5 then. What does cybersecurity look like?
I think I actually think cybersecurity is going to change significantly. I think there's going to be a piece that's going to be more business risk focused. So thinking about business, cyber risk and technology risk as a part of overall operational risk of a business. And there'll be a piece of the security team that sits there that does those business outcome sort of things, which is not what GRC is today, by the way. This is very much governance, risk and compliance. It is risk management but it's not necessarily compliance. So I think there'll be one side that goes that way. And I think from a technology perspective, there's a lot that sits under cybersecurity today because we realized it was important for security and IT wasn't doing it very well. And I think those pieces will go back into generic IT. So we'll start pushing more and more stuff back to the front lines of IT operations. And what will be left in security is the detection and response capabilities. So from a defender perspective, I think the security teams will actually get smaller, but the footprint of cybersecurity across a business will get bigger. That's what I think is going to happen.
JR?
Yeah, I mean, speaking from a integrated or a value-added reseller side, I think there's probably going to be a lot of consolidation in the market. I think we're starting to see that a little bit today. But a lot of these bigger players, these other cybersecurity companies are going to gobble up some of these smaller ones. I think there'll be quite a bit of consolidation there. And then to Helen's point, I do think cybersecurity will get integrated more deeply and as a foundational thing to organizations and not just sort of bolted onto IT like we sort of see it today.
Right.
I would agree. I believe that there's going to be significant change in the industry. Helen pointed out and JR pointed out some of these areas. But if you just reflect back on what we saw in the technology industry when we went from client server based technology deployments, right, deploying software on premise inside of organizations, to cloud based deployment models, to now distributed cloud and on premise hybrid models in terms of deploying technology assets and technology services, not just through a single vendor, but through multiple vendors and solution providers. The fact now that you can consume infrastructure and servers and storage like you can consume power for your home, like a utility. Like 15 years ago, we were talking about this, but now it's a reality. And so I think 10 years from now, right, 5-10 years from now, you're going to see these massive re-architectures of the industry, massive consolidation, massive re-architecture in terms of service delivery. And I love what Helen said about you're going to see some components of technologies and services and operational responsibilities move back into IT, whether it's corporate IT or a service provider that you're using, maybe an MSP or a reseller. Right? I think you're going to see those things shift. And I think they have to, because guess what? We're not solving the staffing problem, right, in the industry. We're not solving it fast enough. We're not tooling people up fast enough.
We have 15,000 open positions in cybersecurity in Arizona right now.
Just Arizona.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So something has to change, right?
So let me make my prediction.
Please.
So within about 5 years, quantum computing will be accessible. And when quantum computing goes mainstream, everything they talked about today will change.
And how are you defining quantum computing?
Well, it's a methodology that's used to power computers. And a lot of people think that none of the systems that we use today could protect anyone's IT assets if you had someone on the other side that was using quantum computing. Because it is so much more powerful and so much more capable than what we have today. I mean, it's orders of magnitude more capable. So it's coming.
Game changing. So, hey, Steve, can I piggyback on your comment?
Yeah.
So Chattanooga has a quantum ring downtown, 7 kilometers that they've set up. And so for those people out there that have heard about quantum and think, oh, quantum's a pipe dream, like it's never going to be there. No, it's active. Yeah. It's a 7-kilometer quantum ring, right? And they're connected to the universities downtown. And it's phenomenal. And you can go in and take your technologies or take your software and you can test them on the network.
Wow.
Yeah, both of our universities have quantum centers that are focused on this emerging technology. So.
And with these AI groups, Steve, that are affiliated with Arizona Technology Council, we have higher ed involved in those conversations.
Yes. Yeah, we do.
And for our viewers and listeners who want to continue this conversation, right, check out Arizona Technology Council. wealth of information, a great organization to belong to. I mean, every time we have these conversations once a month for 51 episodes now, I can't help but think that if you are not yet a member of the Arizona Technology Council, you're really missing out on the opportunity to connect with, obviously, professionals like this. And to your point earlier, Mark, being able to be circled around with people who are not only like-minded, also probably smarter than you in some areas, and those case studies, the opportunity to really link arms and be in a much safer place. We love when we're live on LinkedIn, as we do each month. And I want to thank Daniel Acosta, as well as Igor, I always pronounce the last name wrong, Iliansky, I'm sorry, Igor, with Listen Up. They both have participated today, and we're going to close out this episode. But I love what Igor said. He said, great to connect with you. Legal and financial representatives are probably going to be among the most biased about AI, given how susceptible their jobs are. So we're just going to plant that little seed. We love when our viewers are participating with us in conversation. And thank you for being part of our conversation today. What a great panel. Again, we are constantly in incredible conversations with the folks that come and circle around us on AZ TechCast. If you'd like to be a leading expert and someone who participates in the panel, then please reach out to marketing@aztechcouncil.org to learn more about your opportunity to further position yourself as a tech expert, influencer, and innovator right here on Arizona Technology Council's AZ TechCast show. Today was brought to you by Arizona Commerce Authority, the state's leading economic development organization with a streamlined approach to grow and strengthen Arizona's economy. We want to thank you again for listening, and we'll be back next month with another episode of AZ TechCast. Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of AZ TechCast with Arizona Technology Council, featuring leading tech and business experts that help influence and shape our great state and the industries they serve.